Don Rumsfeld is a well-known loser. He's the worst Secretary of Defense, certainly in my lifetime. It'd be amazing if there was a worse Secretary of Defense in American history. He bungled into Iraq, said that it would cost almost nothing. It would cost in the neighborhood of $5 trillion so far. To be fair, that's Iraq and Afghanistan put together. So perhaps just a couple of $1 trillion for Iraq. He said that there will be very little casualties, of course. We had over 5,000 U.S. troops killed. We had over 30,000 wounded. And then the Iraqis had several hundred thousand, and some estimates have over 1 million civilians killed. So that was the epic disaster that this Don Rumsfeld, who views himself as so brilliant, put together for us in Iraq. And eventually his boss, George Bush, had to fire him for grotesque incompetence. When George Bush has to fire you for incompetence, you know you've really set a bar there. Okay. Now, nonetheless, this guy has the nerve, the audacity to go on national television and criticize, first of all, anyone. How could you dare talk about foreign policy or show your face after what an embarrassment you were? But to go on and talk about President Obama and how he's not doing the right things in Afghanistan. And then he says something outrageous. Listen.
He was friendly. Our relationship with Karzai and with Afghanistan was absolutely first rate in the Bush administration. It has gone downhill like a toboggan ever since the Obama administration came. This administration, the White House and the State Department, have failed to get a status of forces agreement. A trained ape could get a status of forces agreement. It does not take a genius.
A trained ape. A trained ape. Okay, we'll get back to that in a second. First of all, you want to hear something funny? The Bush administration could not get a status of forces agreement with the Iraqis. That's why they had to make a deal where we would have to eventually leave. President Obama also tried to get a status of forces agreement where we would be allowed to keep some soldiers in, but they would have immunity if there was exchange of gunfire, etc. President Obama failed at the same task that President Bush failed at, and so eventually we had to leave Iraq. So his own boss couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. So interesting that he says that. Second of all, our relationship in Afghanistan was really good. Really? We nailed it in Afghanistan? If you remember, we actually did have bin Laden cornered in Afghanistan in Tora Bora. In fact, a U.S. general was in the area and asked Don Rumsfeld, may I pursue him with about 6,000 U.S. troops? The answer from Don Rumsfeld was, no, do not pursue him. And guess what happened? Bin Laden escaped, went to Pakistan, and Rumsfeld never got him. Neither did his boss, Dick Cheney and George Bush. They never got him. Who's the person who got him? Right, Barack Obama. Okay, so this incompetent loser has the nerve to talk about apes? All right, now let's remind you some more of his incompetence. Of course, what did Don Rumsfeld know? Well, he had this legendary answer.
There are reports that there is no evidence of a direct link between Baghdad and some of these terrorist organizations.
There are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know.
Excuse me, but is this an unknown unknown?
I'm not.
Several unknowns, and I'm just wondering.
I'm not going to say which it is.
But Mr. Secretary,
I'm right here. I'm right here.
Yeah, brilliant. But he would never at least get caught on tape lying, right? Well, let's find out.
If they did not have these weapons of mass destruction, though, granted, all of that is true, why then did they pose an immediate threat to us, to this country?
You and a few other critics are the only people I've heard use the phrase immediate threat. I didn't. The president didn't. And it's become kind of folklore that that's what's happened. The president went...
You're saying that nobody in the administration said that?
I can't speak for nobody and everybody in the administration and say nobody said that.
Vice President didn't say that?
If you have any citations, I'd like to see them.
We have one here. It says, some have argued that this is you speaking, some have argued that the nuclear threat from Iraq is not imminent, that Saddam is at least 5 to 7 years away from having nuclear weapons. I would not be so certain. Close to imminent.
Well, I've tried to be precise and I've tried to be accurate.
No terrorist state poses a greater or more immediate threat to the security of our people and the stability of the world than the regime of Saddam Hussein in Iraq.
My view of the situation was that he had, we believe, the best intelligence that we had and other countries had.
Oops. Oh, you never got me on tape saying immediate threat. Oh, there it is. I said immediate threat. What happened, Don? You liar? You cost the lives of hundreds of thousands of people with your lie? Now you're going to call our commander-in-chief a trained ape? I think you lost your ability to criticize that man. All right, well, if you weren't clear yet on what a grotesque liar and incompetent clown Don Rumsfeld is, well, Don, didn't you say that we know where the weapons of mass destruction are? Well, tell us where they are, Don.
We know where they are. They're in the area around Tikrit and Baghdad and east, west, south, and north somewhat.
Oh, east, west, south, and north somewhat. Well, they weren't in any of those places, you clown. And gee, I wonder if the use of the words trained ape had any other context when referring to President Obama. Hey, Don, you're a miserable failure. You're one of the worst people we have ever had in our government. Just do all of us a great favor, and yourself too, and stop embarrassing yourself, you pathetic loser. Is that clear?